This moment still haunts me even now. My life changed forever that day 2 years ago. It was supposed to be simple, a weekend getaway to a lakeside cabin with my son, Adrian. My husband, Marcus, couldn't make it. He never did. Work always came first, and I was used to that, used to being alone. But that day, something felt off. I didn't know why, not then, and not now. The lake shimmered under the afternoon sun, the air thick with the scent of pine and water. Adrian helped me unpack, laying out the blankets while I set up the small picnic I had prepared. The summer heat pressed down on me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of my life ease. I asked Adrian to rub some sunscreen on my back, a simple request, one I'd made dozens of times when he was younger. I didn't think twice about it. He was my son, my boy. Why would I? At first it was nothing, just his hands, just helping me. But then I felt it. The hesitation, the lingering touch, lower and lower, and I didn't stop him. Why didn't I stop him? You think you know yourself. You think you know your family. But there is always a moment, one moment, that can unravel everything. For me, it was that afternoon by the lake. Marcus and I had been married for over 15 years. If you asked anyone, they'd say we had the perfect life. A beautiful home, 2 wonderful children, stability. But the cracks were there. You don't see them until you're inside the walls. You don't feel the emptiness unless you're the one living it. For years, Marcus was consumed by his job. Late nights, weekends, holidays, he was never really there. I used to tell myself he did it for us, that all the overtime, the dedication was to give us a better life. But what good is a home if no one is in it? I became invisible to him. When he did come home, he barely looked at me. He stopped asking how I felt, what I wanted, what I needed. Our conversations were reduced to short exchanges, bills, groceries, the kids. He loved Adrian and his little sister Elise, but even with them, he was a shadow. Present, but not really. I remember that morning so clearly, standing in the kitchen watching Marcus rush out the door. He grabbed his briefcase, kissed Elise on the forehead, and barely glanced at me. "Sorry, Claire, I can't make it this weekend. Something came up at work." I didn't argue. I never did. I just nodded, throat tight, pretending it didn't bother me. I told myself it was fine, that Adrian and I would go alone. He was 16 back then, tall, lanky, with Marcus's deep brown eyes but a softer face. He didn't react when I told him it would be just us. I think he had already gotten used to his father's absence. He simply shrugged, grabbed the bags, and followed me to the car. I watched him in the passenger seat as we drove, earbuds in, staring out the window like teenagers do. He was growing up so fast, slipping away from me, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. The drive felt endless, my mind drifting to Marcus. I thought about the things we used to do together. Movie nights, long walks, spontaneous road trips just for the fun of it. I thought about the way he used to touch me. I hadn't felt that in years. I hadn't felt anything. I was so tired of being unseen. Adrian helped me carry the bags to a quiet spot near the lake. I laid out the blankets while he set up the umbrella. I don't know why I suddenly felt the need to talk to him. Maybe because he was the only one there. I let the sun warm my skin, finally relaxing as I stretched out on the blanket. The world felt still, quiet. I closed my eyes and sighed. Adrian, could you help me with some sunscreen? Sure, Mom, he said, kneeling beside me. His hands were warm against my back, gentle as he rubbed the lotion into my skin. It was nothing, it was normal, until it wasn't. His touch changed. The pressure shifted, slower, lingering, lower. My breath caught. A chill ran through me despite the heat. I could have stopped him, I should have, but I didn't, and I still don't know why. You think you know yourself, you think you know your family, but in a single moment everything can change, and for me it did. That day by the lake, something broke, and it has never been whole again. Maybe I just needed someone to hear me. It's nice to get out, don't you think? I said, trying to sound cheerful. Adrian nodded, pushing his hair back with one hand. Yeah, Mom, it's nice. I lay down on the towel, letting the warmth of the sun sink into my skin. For a while, I didn't move, I just stayed still, as if the weight of the past few years could lift off me even for just an hour. But then I remembered the oil. Sitting up, I turned to Adrian. Can you help me rub this on my back? I asked. I can't reach it myself. He hesitated for a second, his eyes searching mine before taking the bottle from my hand. I lay back down, face to the towel, and waited. The first touch was careful, almost unsure. His hands were hesitant, like he was afraid of hurting me. I smiled to myself, reminded of when he was little, when he would hold my hand while crossing the street. His hands had been so small back then. You can press a little harder, I murmured, my voice muffled. It's okay. He listened, and his hands grew more firm, smoothing the oil over my shoulders and down my back. I closed my eyes, focusing on the warmth, on the rhythm of his touch. For a moment, I let myself enjoy it. It had been so long since anyone had touched me, and that realization hit me harder than I expected. But then I felt his hands move lower, slowly, carefully, down the curve of my back. My breath caught in my throat. I opened my mouth to say something, but nothing came out. My mind raced, but my body stayed still. I told myself it was fine, that he was just helping, that I was imagining things, but I wasn't. His hands hovered there, near the edge of where my towel ended. I could feel his hesitation. I could feel my own. And instead of stopping him, I spoke. It's okay, you can rub there too. The words hung in the air like something toxic. The moment they left my mouth, I knew I couldn't take them back. Adrian didn't say anything. He didn't stop either. I squeezed my eyes shut as his hands moved lower than they should have. My heart pounded so hard I was afraid he might hear it. I wanted to move, to sit up, to tell him to stop, but I didn't. I couldn't. I let it happen. Even now, I don't know why. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe I was too desperate to feel wanted, even if it was wrong. Or maybe I just didn't care anymore. That day by the lake, something inside me broke, and nothing would ever be the same again. By the way, if you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. I know this isn't easy to hear, and I appreciate you listening. If you find this story interesting, or if you think someone might relate to what I'm sharing, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps me keep sharing stories like this and reminds me that I'm not alone. All right, let's get back to it. After that day at the lake, something shifted. I couldn't ignore it. What I felt, what I saw, the way Adrian looked at me afterward. It wasn't just a lingering glance or a passing moment. It was constant. Every time I caught his eye, there was something different in him. Something I didn't want to name but couldn't unsee. I tried to bury it. When we got home that evening, I did everything I could to act normal. I made dinner, cleaned the kitchen, and talked to Elise about her day. But Adrian's presence lingered. He moved through the house like a shadow, quiet, watching, and I felt it. I felt his eyes on me in a way I never had before. That night, I stood at the bathroom sink, staring at my reflection. My hands trembled as I washed my face, the cold water doing nothing to shake the feeling inside me. I closed my eyes, willing myself to forget, to erase it, to pretend it never happened. But the memory of his hands on me, of my own silence, wouldn't fade. But deep down, I knew the truth. Nothing was the same, and it never would be again. I hated myself for it, and I hated him for making me feel this way about my own son. Marcus didn't notice a thing. He came home late as usual, his tie loose, his face tired. He kissed my cheek out of habit, just a ghost of what it used to be. "Long day?" I asked, hoping for some kind of conversation. He grunted and nodded, already halfway to the living room. It was always like this. His presence felt like an afterthought, and I felt invisible again. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while Marcus snored softly beside me. The house was quiet, but my mind wasn't. I kept thinking about Adrian, about his hands and his gaze. I knew it wasn't right. I knew I should stop it, whatever it was, before it went any further. But there was another part of me, something dark, something lonely, that wanted to hold on to it, that craved the attention, the touch, the feeling of being seen. The days passed, and Adrian didn't say anything, but his silence was louder than words. He didn't avoid me, not exactly. Instead, it was like he stayed closer. I'd catch him watching me when I cooked, when I cleaned, when I sat alone on the couch at night. And I let it happen. I didn't stop myself. Then came the next weekend. It was hot again, and the house felt stifling. Marcus was gone, working some last-minute shift, leaving me and Adrian alone, just like before. I asked him if he wanted to go back to a lakeside cabin, just the two of us. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I thought being outside would help clear my mind. Maybe I wanted to test myself, to see if I could push it all away. The drive was quiet this time. Adrian didn't wear his earbuds though. He just sat there, looking out the window, his knee bouncing restlessly. I wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence, but every time I opened my mouth, the words stuck in my throat. When we got to Lakeside Cabin, it was almost empty. I remember how blue the water looked, how the wind felt on my face. I spread out the towels again, just like before. Adrian helped me set everything up. I didn't ask him to rub oil on my back this time. I couldn't. Instead, I lay there with my eyes closed, pretending everything was fine. But even with my eyes shut, I could feel his gaze. I could feel him watching me. The real breaking point came later. 6 months later, I was still down for it. Adrian stood by me, watching me, my mind wandering through memories of what it was like to fall in love with River. That afternoon, we decided to rinse off a lakeside cabin showers before heading home. It was supposed to be quick, just to get the sand off our skin. But something happened then that I still can't explain. When we reached the showers, Adrian stepped under first, letting the water run down his back. I stood off to the side, watching him for a moment before I stepped in too. I don't know what came over me, but I peeled off my outer clothing and stood beside him, the water cool against my skin. Adrian looked at me, startled. I don't know if it was surprise, confusion, or something else entirely, but he didn't say a word. I glanced at him, then really looked at him and said, "You should take off your shorts too. You need to rinse properly." I don't know why I said it. Maybe I was testing him, testing myself. He hesitated for a second, then did as I said, sliding his shorts off. And there we were, together, alone, the water pouring down on us, washing everything away, except what we were both feeling. I turned my back to him and asked softly, "Help me with my back," and I leaned the back of my head against the pavement. He did. His hands were careful again, just like before, but there was no mistaking the tension. I felt it in him, I felt it in me. When he touched my waist, I froze. The air seemed to thicken around us, the sound of the water drowning out everything. Else I could have walked away, I could have stopped it, but instead I leaned back closer to him. I reached for his hands and guided them to my chest, and when I did, he didn't pull away. What happened next, I can't explain, won't explain. It was a moment, a blur of need, loneliness, and something else I don't want to name. It wasn't soft, and it wasn't slow. It was desperate, passionate, wrong in every way, but I couldn't stop it. I didn't want to, and when it was over, we just stood there, the water still pouring down on us, washing away the evidence but not the truth. He held me, then held me like no one else had in years, and I led him afterwards. We didn't speak. We dried off, packed up, and walked back to the car in silence. I watched Adrian from the corner of my eye, his face flushed, his movements stiff. I knew I'd ruined everything. I knew we'd cross a line that could never be uncrossed, and I wondered if it would feel like this again. Yet for the first time in years, I felt alive. The ride home was silent at first. The car felt too small, too heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on us. I ripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to focus on the road, but my mind was spinning. I could still feel him. Adrian, his hands, his body, the weight of everything we'd just done. I kept stealing glances at him in the passenger seat. He sat stiffly, staring out the window, his face flushed, his jaw tight, and then out of nowhere he spoke. "Mom," he said, his voice low, almost unsure. I didn't look at him, I couldn't, but I heard him. What just happened back there? My heart skipped a beat for a moment. I thought about pretending I didn't hear him, about brushing it off, changing the subject. But there was no point in pretending anymore, not after what we'd done. I took a shaky breath and answered, I don't know. It was the truth, or at least the closest thing to it. I didn't know what had happened or why. All I knew was that everything had changed. We didn't talk again till we pulled into the driveway. I turned off the car, but neither of us moved. Adrian finally looked at me, really looked at me, and somehow from here to earth, I feel more beautiful. I went on. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes that scared me. It wasn't confusion or guilt or even shame. It was longing. "How long have you felt like this?" he asked. His words sent chills through me because I'd been asking myself the same question. I looked at him then, and it was like a dam broke inside me. "I don't know," I whispered. Maybe longer than I want to admit." We were both quiet after that, just sitting there in the dark. I thought that would be it, that we'd go inside, try to forget it all and pretend. Nothing had happened, but Adrian had other ideas. Before I could open the door, he leaned over and kissed me. It was soft at first, hesitant, like he was afraid I'd pull away, but I didn't. I let him kiss me, and I kissed him back, and then I lost control. I don't know if it was the loneliness, the years of neglect, or the way Adrian looked at me like no one had in so long, but I let it happen right there outside our house. Adrian pulled me into him, his hands sliding over me like they belonged there. I felt alive, I felt wanted, I felt seen for the first time in years. I didn't care about anything else. I don't know how long we stayed like that, tangled up in each other, but eventually we moved inside. I don't remember much about the walk to the door, just the feeling of his hand on mine, the quiet between us, buzzing like electricity. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Once we were inside, everything escalated like we'd been holding back for too long, and the dam had finally burst. The next few days were a blur. Adrian stayed close to me, always finding reasons to brush against me or look at me when no one else was watching. I tell myself to stop, to pull away, to end whatever this was. But every time I looked at him, I saw the same loneliness I felt. It was like we were mirrors of each other, reflecting back the same need, the same emptiness. And I couldn't say no. I didn't want to. At night, I'd lie in bed next to Marcus, staring at the Solink, listening to the sound of his breathing. I think about Adrian in the next room, about the way his hands felt, the way he made me feel alive again. And then I'd close my eyes, guilt curling up in my chest like a snake. I knew it couldn't last. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. The tension between us grew stronger every day until it finally exploded. It was late one evening. Marcus was at work again. Isa was asleep, and Adrian and I were in the kitchen. I was washing dishes, trying to keep my mind off everything, when I felt him behind me. I turned around, and there he was, looking at me the same way he had on the beach. "Adrian," I said softly, trying to warn him, but he didn't stop. He stepped closer, so close I could feel his breath on my neck. "Mom," he whispered, "I can't stop thinking about you." I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I wanted to tell him to stop, to go back to his room, to leave me alone, but I didn't. Instead, I looked up at him and I said the one thing I shouldn't have. That was the moment everything fell apart. Adrian kissed me again, harder, this time desperate. And I kissed him back. I didn't care that it was wrong. I didn't care about Marcus or the life we'd built. All I cared about was him. Adrian, my son, the only person who made me feel like I mattered. Since that day on the beach, things haven't gone back to normal. In fact, I'm not sure they ever will. Adrian and I, we cross line one that can't be erased, no matter how hard I try to convince myself otherwise. What started as a moment has turned into something. I can't control the guilt is there, heavy, constant, but it doesn't stop me, and that's the part that scares me the most. I look at my husband, Marcus, and my daughter every day, and I wonder how they don't see it. How they don't notice the cracks that are spreading through our family. Maybe they're too caught up in their own lives to see me slipping, or maybe I've just gotten better at hiding it, but deep down, I know this can't last forever. Secrets have a way of coming out, and when they do, the fallout will destroy everything I've tried to stop. I've told myself over and over again that this is wrong, that Adrian deserves better, that I deserved better, that every time he touches me, every time he looks at me, like I'm the only person in the world, I lose myself. He makes me feel alive and I haven't felt in years, maybe ever, and that's the truth I have to live with. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can fix it, and that's why I'm sharing my story with you. Maybe someone out there has an answer, something I haven't thought of. Maybe you can help me see a way out of this mess I've made before it's too late. So please, if you have advice, if you've been in a situation like this or know someone who has, I want to hear from you. And if nothing else, let this be a warning. Loneliness can push you to places you never thought you'd go. Don't let yourself get lost like I did. Don't let your world fall apart before you realize what's happening, because once you cross that line, there's no going back. Thank you for listening. Please share your thoughts. Like this video if you found it helpful, and subscribe for more. I need to know I'm not alone sometimes. The biggest betrayals aren't the ones we commit against others, but the ones we commit against ourselves.